Duke really needs to slow down. Every time it feels like he finally has a solid plan for dealing with Kingsley, he makes another move that puts the entire operation at risk. And in Fightland Season 1, Episode 3, No Innocence, Duke takes things much further than he probably intended. The drugs weren't enough. Now we're talking about a bomb. Meanwhile, Kim is getting deeper into her undercover operation. Zeek is making decisions that could come back to haunt him. Cece is hiding a relationship that could put her family in an incredibly awkward position. And Duke's relationship with Joy finally takes a major turn. So yes, there's a lot happening. And somehow, Duke still manages to make the biggest mess of all. Duke's plan started with a purpose. To be fair to Duke, his revenge plan didn't begin as complete madness. He understood Kingsley's weakness. Money. Duke knows that attacking Kingsley's family wouldn't necessarily destroy him. Kingsley might be angry if one of his children was targeted, but anger isn't the same thing as losing control. Money is different. If Duke can disrupt Kingsley's cash flow, he can actually hurt the Empire. That's why stealing the drugs made sense. It was dangerous, but there was a strategy behind it. Duke wasn't simply causing chaos for the sake of it. He was trying to make Kingsley feel the consequences. Then Episode 3 happens, and Duke decides a bomb is the next step. At this point, I'm sitting there thinking, Duke, stealing the drugs wasn't enough? You really had to bring explosives into this? Jay gets pulled in again. Of course, Duke can't do something this big by himself, so he brings Jay back into the mess. This time, Duke needs help getting a bomb. Jay isn't exactly thrilled about the idea. You can tell he knows this is becoming too dangerous. But Duke has a way of pulling the people closest to him into his problems, and Jay once again finds himself helping his friend. Duke and Lazaro eventually manage to get the bomb inside the casino. The plan appears to be moving exactly how Duke wants. Then Duke notices a guard, and that's when his conscience kicks in. Because whatever Duke wants to do to Kingsley, he doesn't actually want an innocent person to die. So Duke turns around. Of course he does. He goes back inside, and before long, he's trapped with the guard and the very bomb he helped put there. That might be the most important Duke moment in the episode, because it reminds us that he's not completely consumed by revenge. He wants Kingsley to suffer. He wants him to pay. But Duke still has a line he doesn't want to cross. The problem is that every time he gets closer to Kingsley, that line gets harder to maintain. And eventually, his conscience could become the thing that saves him, or the thing that destroys his entire operation. Zeek is becoming harder to trust. Now we need to talk about Zeek, because something about this guy doesn't sit right with me. He's ambitious. He's aggressive. He's constantly trying to prove that he's capable of running things. But the more he makes moves behind the scenes, the more questionable his motives become. At first, Zeek made it sound like bringing Duke back into the martial world was about family and loyalty. I'm not convinced anymore. It increasingly looks like Zeek sees Duke as an asset. Duke can make money. Duke has a reputation. And the Marshals are interested in money above almost everything else. So perhaps Zeek isn't trying to save Duke. Perhaps he's trying to put Duke back into a position where everyone, including himself, can profit from him. That's a very different motive. And Duke needs to recognize that before he gets used. Then Zeek gives Duke information he should have kept. Kingsley's disappearance becomes another problem. This is exactly the kind of information you would normally keep within the family. But Zeek tells Duke that he doesn't know where Kingsley is. That may seem harmless, but look at the bigger picture. Duke is already trying to force Kingsley out of hiding. So any information about Kingsley's movements could become extremely useful. Zeek wants people to see him as a serious businessman. But some of his decisions are making him look less calculated and more impulsive. And that could eventually hurt the entire martial operation. He's also convinced that the Russians are responsible for the casino bombing. And now Nikolai has become a person of interest. Which brings us to one of the episode's biggest secrets. Cece and Nikolai are a problem waiting to explode. Because while Zeek is looking at Nikolai as an enemy, Cece is secretly involved with him. Yes, that is going to be a problem. The Albanians already suspect the Russians are connected to the stolen drugs. They're also looking at them in relation to Sergei's son's death. So from a family perspective, Nikolai is potentially connected to some very serious threats. Meanwhile, Cece is secretly seeing him. That puts her in a terrible position. Her family doesn't trust Nikolai. She does. Or at least, she trusts him enough to keep seeing him. But how long can that secret survive? Eventually, somebody is going to discover what's happening. And when they do, Cece could find herself caught between the people she grew up with and the man she's secretly chosen to be with. That's the kind of secret that doesn't stay quiet forever. Kim's undercover operation is getting riskier. Kim's storyline is also becoming much more interesting. We now know that Simeon was her confidential informant, and his death changes the situation completely. Kim knows the operation is becoming dangerous. She has every reason to pull out, but she doesn't. She's determined to bring the marshals down. And considering what we've seen from them, it's easy to understand why. The problem is Duke. Kim needs to get close to him if she wants to use him. But the closer she gets, the harder it becomes to determine where the undercover act ends. There's clearly chemistry between them. Is all of it fake? I'm not convinced. Kim may have started this operation with one objective, but feelings can complicate even the best undercover plan. And if Duke eventually discovers that Kim has been using him, their relationship could turn very ugly very quickly. Simeon's phone is still paying off. Then there's Simeon's phone. That thing refuses to stop being useful. Even though Simeon is gone, Duke and Lazaro continue using the phone to collect information. They send messages to Simeon's contacts and study the responses. Slowly, they're piecing together connections. They're learning who knows whom. They're figuring out where different pieces of the operation lead. It's almost like Simeon left behind a trail that continues working after his death. And the more information Duke gets, the more dangerous he becomes to the people trying to keep their secrets hidden. Duke doesn't think he has a future in the ring. Duke also keeps insisting that he doesn't want to fight anymore. But everyone around him seems determined to disagree. His father wants him back in the ring. Zeek is telling people he'll get Duke back. And then Eric Coleman arrives. Clark Peters brings a welcome presence to the series as Coleman. And for now, I'm keeping an open mind about him. He seems genuine. But this is Fightland. That doesn't mean much. Someone can appear trustworthy in one scene and reveal an entirely different side of themselves later. Still, Coleman gives Duke something worth considering. Maybe Duke's fighting career isn't really over, because whether he wants to admit it or not, he's still fighting every day. He's fighting Kingsley. He's fighting his past. He's fighting the anger inside him. And he's fighting his own conscience. The only difference is that there isn't a boxing ring around him anymore. Duke and Joy finally reconnect. And then we get Duke and Joy. Finally, after 3 episodes of tension, these two finally find their way back toward each other. Joy arrives at the gym and starts working the heavy bag. Duke watches her, and the chemistry between them is obvious. They barely need words. There's so much history between them that one look says more than a long conversation could. Eventually, they give in to that attraction. And honestly, the scene works because it doesn't feel like these two suddenly decided they wanted each other. The history has been there. The unresolved feelings have been there. The episode simply allows them to stop pretending those feelings don't exist. But because this is Fightland, even that relationship can't remain simple. There's still the question of Aiden. I'm still watching Aiden. I'm not saying Aiden is Duke's son. I'm just saying the show keeps giving us reasons to ask questions. Joy's reaction when Duke and Aiden interact is particularly interesting. She looks happy to see them together. But there's also a nervousness there. Almost like she's worried Duke could eventually discover something she isn't ready to tell him. That doesn't prove anything. But in a show where almost everybody is hiding something, those little reactions matter. And I'm definitely keeping my eye on this storyline. Final thoughts. No Innocence pushes Duke's revenge story into much more dangerous territory. The stolen drugs were already risky. Now he's dealing with bombs. Kim is getting closer to Duke. Zeek is making questionable decisions. Cece is hiding her relationship with Nikolai. Simeon's phone is exposing connections. And Duke is slowly being pulled back toward the fighting world he claims he left behind. The title No Innocence feels appropriate because almost nobody is completely clean here. Everybody has something they're hiding. Everybody wants something. And everybody seems willing to take risks to get it. But Duke might be the person taking the biggest risk of all. He wants revenge badly enough to put himself in danger. Yet he still has enough of a conscience to turn around when he realizes someone innocent could get hurt. That's the contradiction at the heart of his character. He wants to become the person capable of destroying Kingsley, but he doesn't actually want to become a monster. And that's why I keep wondering whether Duke's biggest enemy is really Kingsley. Maybe it isn't. Maybe Duke himself is becoming the greatest threat to Duke. Because revenge is easy to start. Walking away from it is the hard part. And with every episode, Duke seems to be moving further away from the possibility of walking away. So now I'm watching one thing more closely than anything else. How long can Duke keep control of his revenge before it starts controlling him? Because the drugs were only the beginning. The bomb was a warning. And if Duke keeps escalating, the next move may be the one he can't take back.